Hello and welcome to another video review. This is Age of Empires 3, the Asian Dynasties expansion for PC and Mac. This is the second expansion pack to Age of Empires 3, and it was released in 2007 for PC and then 2008 for Mac. And it was actually done by a collaboration between Ensemble Studios and Big Huge Games. If you've never heard of Big Huge Games, they did the Rise of Nations franchise, which is really pretty much on par with the Age of Empires series. They're very, very similar games in terms of the gameplay, but Rise of Nations is a little bit more complicated. So you had two very veteran studios working together on this to create this really solid expansion pack. But the question is, did they do it? Well, in the visual department and the sound department, everything is still up to snuff with the original game, like in the War Chiefs. They didn't screw any of the visual or sound design up. Everything that's new fits in really well with the stuff that's old. So I'm not going to talk about the visuals or the sound. But what I am going to talk about are the story and the gameplay. Now, the way they did the campaigns in the Asian Dynasties was very different from both the original Age of Empires 3 and the War Chiefs. Those were both story-driven campaigns that followed the Black family as they carved their path in the New World, and the first Age of Empires 3 campaign was completely ridiculous. It was Fountain of Youth, fantasy, all that ridiculousness. In War Chiefs, they went to the more historical base, but still follow the Black family. In Asian Dynasties, it's all historical base, and it's three separate campaigns. You have the Japanese campaign, which follows the unification of Japan under the Tokugawa shogunate. And it's actually pretty interesting that they went for this, because it actually plays really well, and I was really pleasantly surprised by it. Yet it still has its own little story following a general named Sakuma Kichiro. And so they still do have the story-driven stuff, but it's within a very historical, very kind of true to the history campaign. And I really did appreciate that. That was a lot more like the old Age of Empires campaigns. Then you have the Chinese campaign, which is loosely based on that hypothesis that Chinese ships discovered the New World before Christopher Columbus, and so it follows this Ming Dynasty captain named Zhang Huang, I think is how you pronounce it. I can't remember exactly. But they go over and find the New World, and all sorts of crazy stuff happens. So that's kind of more of a what-if campaign, but it is still grounded in that historical hypothesis kind of thing. Then you have the Indian campaign, which is about the rebellion in 1857. And you follow Nanib Sahir, I think is how you pronounce that. But he's a lieutenant of one of the sepoy regiments, and you're basically rebelling against the British East India Company. And so all three of these campaigns are pretty historically based. Obviously the one is just kind of a hypothesis, but the others are pretty grounded in history, and it's actually pretty interesting to play them. There is a decent amount of variety in them, but like War Chiefs, it doesn't feel quite as fresh as Age of Empires 3 did. There wasn't quite as much variety, but still, it was fun. They also added in some new game modes, King of the Hill, Regicide, Treaty, and Treaty with No Blockade. Basically, the King of the Hill is pretty self-explanatory. Regicide is like in Age of Empires 2. You have you have the regent unit instead of the king, and if they're killed, then the player whose regent is killed loses the game. And so that's pretty interesting. The Treaty mode is basically, you can set a certain amount of time, like it's 10 minutes or so, where you can't fight. You can build up on all your forces and everything, but you can't fight each other. And once that treaty grace period expires, then you can just wage all-out war. And that's actually pretty cool. They also changed the way that you play these new civilizations. You can play China, Japan, and India. And unlike the Native Americans or the Europeans, you actually have to build wonders in order to age up, which is actually pretty cool, because you build these wonders and it's like, oh, well, you can just age up with those. So it's a very different style of play than the Europeans or even the Native Americans. So that adds a lot more variety in the game, and it's actually pretty fun to play as the Asians, and especially the Japanese. They're almost overpowered, to be honest with you. But each of these new civilizations fits in really well with the others in the game, and there's nothing that's so overpowered or so underpowered that you're not going to want to play as them. They all play as their own special ways. And the Asian civilizations also get this resource called Export. And you can basically choose a European ally. And you'll get access to certain units if you spend your export. The gather rate for it's really slow, but you can get little bonuses like Portuguese man-o-wars and stuff like that, or whatever their ship is. I can't remember exactly what it's called. And so that's pretty cool. And for the new native civilizations, what I mean by that is the new little areas where you can build trading posts and get units from. You get such like the Sufis, the Shaolin, Jesuits, and all them. And so that's actually pretty cool as well. And the Asian civilizations have monks, whereas the Europeans have explorers, and the natives have the war chiefs. So, other than that, there really isn't too much to say about the Asian Dynasties, except that it is backwards compatible. So, if you have the War Chiefs expansion, and you install that, and then you install the Asian Dynasties, you can actually play the Asian Dynasties with all of the War Chiefs content, and it will also play with all the Age of Empires 3 content. So, if you have this, it's cumulative. It builds on the other two. And so you can combine all this and have some pretty interesting gameplay. It's actually surprisingly way more fun with the Asian Dynasties than it was with the original game and the War Chiefs. So this is a really solid expansion pack. It doesn't really take anything away from the game. It only adds to it and makes it better. So I have to give this a 4 out of 5. Thanks for watching.